everybody. My name is Carol Champion. I'm the Director of Industrial Engagement at the Ontario Centres of Excellence and Sector Lead for Advanced Manufacturing. I'd like to welcome you all to this panel discussion. I'll just wait a second. Okay, this is the Bridging the Talent, Translating Training and Talent into Manufacturing Careers panel. And it's all about some of the aspects that are really shifting in Ontario, including the demographic shifts. The manufacturing workforce indicate that there will be a skills shortage in the near future. This sector must continue to attract a base of highly educated, flexible and skilled workforce to remain competitive in a global environment. The skills valued in the knowledge economy extend way beyond the technical abilities honed in the classroom and lab to the business acumen, which historically has been developed on the job. So this panel will explore the opportunities manufacturing can offer graduates, as well as identifying ways to help broaden their understanding of the manufacturing business environment so that Ontario students can contribute more meaningfully towards the success of Ontario companies right from the time that they're employed. So on behalf of Discovery, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Bruce Seeley as the moderator for this session. This is Bruce. Bruce is the president of Tiercel Technology Corporation, and he's a Canadian manufacturing innovator, a leader and a risk taker. For 25 years, he's executed manufacturing programs for some of the most recognized brands in the industries across solar, computer electronics, medical imaging, automotive, and heavy industry. Bruce's innovative approach to complex challenges and vision has permanently shifted paradigms in manufacturing. During the period of 2004 through 2008, he organically grew a contract manufacturing business to $200 million, servicing the solar and medical industries. Most recently, Bruce acquired John G. Wilson Machine, located in Princeton, Ontario, and Second Wind Air Purifier, Inc. of Medina, New York, through Tiercel Technology. Please welcome Bruce as the moderator for this session.
Thank you, Carol, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying Discovery 2011. This panel comes late in the program, but of course we've saved the best for last. I've been here for the last 2 days with a booth here, and I can say I've truly enjoyed the show. Every year I come, it's larger, it's more diverse, and it's one of the few shows that really brings the academic community together with manufacturing and with government, and I think it's really an all-encompassing show, and I think it will continue to grow each year going forward. Joining us today are 4 accomplished panelists who I'm sure will spark engaging discussions and debate. Let me briefly introduce them to you, and you can find further biographical information on the Discovery website. Our first panelist is Ihor Stech, the Vice President of Global Operations at Christie Digital. As Vice President of Operations for Christie, Ihor is responsible for the global planning, purchasing, manufacturing, logistics, and service. Ihor also ensures that Christie projection systems meet the highest manufacturing quality standards and customer requirements. His extensive operations management experience has contributed to an exponential growth in the operations and manufacturing, allowing Christie to remain on the cutting edge of innovation solutions for business, entertainment, and industry. Welcome, Ihor, and thank you. Next is Darren Lawless. He is the Dean of Research at the Sheridan Institute of Technology and Advanced Learning in Oakville. Sheridan Research and Innovation has a broad mandate to work with Sheridan faculty and students to conduct innovative research and develop collaborative industry and academic partnerships that will be linked intrinsically to the academic programs. Darren is an accomplished senior research and development executive with a sound track record moving technology from concept to market. Darren holds a PhD in chemistry and is a multiple award recipient of the National Science and Engineering Research Council of Canada. Thank you for joining us, Darren. Our next panelist is Scott Seeley. Scott is the Executive Director of the Lancaster County Workforce Investment Board. With many partners, he is the founder of the Food Manufacturers Training Consortium of South Central PA and Industrial Maintenance Training Center of Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic Mechatronics Advisory Committee. Scott was the chief architect of the Mechatronics competency model that was adopted by the U.S. Department of Labor. He works closely with the Packaging Machinery Manufacturers Institute as PMMI builds out the components of its mechatronics industry. Thank you, Scott, for making the trip across the border and joining us today through the delays and fog, etc. And completing our panel is Keith Campbell. He is the project manager, Mid-Atlantic Mechatronics Advisory Board, Industrial Maintenance Training Center of Pennsylvania. Keith is deeply involved in advancing technology education in the areas of mechatronics and industrial maintenance. Keith was formerly with the Hershey Company, where his career spanned 28 years in technical and managerial positions. While employed by Hershey, he served as Director of Automation and Integration, Information Technology Relationship Manager for Manufacturing, R&D and Quality, Director of the ISA's Food and Pharmaceutical Industries, and was Founding Director of OMAC Packaging Work Group. Since retiring from Hershey, Keith has operated Campbell Management Services LLC, a firm that provides guidance related to manufacturing technology planning, workforce, and organizational development. Thank you for joining us today, Keith. Our panelists will now talk to you about the experiences of their organizations. Ihor, would you like to start?
Good afternoon. Given that I have only 5 to 10 minutes, let me dive right in. So first of all, I do not necessarily believe that we have an imminent danger of depopulation in manufacturing. And while we are getting older as a society, the workforce is also getting older, but we all working longer. And we still have 7.7% unemployment the last time I checked, so there should be enough people to work. So I don't think we're dealing with a sheer number problem, replacing the retiring cohort, but I think we probably are looking at some issues of structure in how we attract and retain talent in manufacturing. And secondly, I do not believe that today's graduates are any dumber than graduates 25 or 30 years ago, when a big portion of today's labor force actually left school. So the issues we are facing, I believe, in manufacturing and in industry in general are the perception in the society, and also how the careers in manufacturing are being managed. And I think there are 3 elements to this, and they touch industry itself, the government, and the academic society. So first of all, the industry. Let me throw the first stone in my own garden. So industry is not perfect in managing manufacturing careers. The careers that we have today in industry they are vastly different than what we had in the 50s and 60s, where there was a natural progression of careers from lower grade jobs, entry jobs, through mid-level to higher level positions. And in the 80s and 90s, through globalization and through leaning out the industries, a lot of those transitional job positions have been lost in the industry. So now the new graduates who enter the workforce are expected to have the talent and the knowledge to jump over a few steps that in the past were natural progression steps. The companies also very often rely on this almost mythical 5-year experience when they're hiring new graduates. And obviously it's very difficult to work for the first 5 years if everyone is looking for 5 years experience. Our company kind of dispenses with this as much as we can. There are some positions where we do look for experience, but in most cases we recruit straight from the campuses. We do hire new graduates, and we try to find leaders among them, because if out of 100 engineers, 80 of them might be quite happy to work in engineering department for the rest of their careers, the other 10 to 20 look for something else. They look for a chance to advance within the company. They look for a broader context of what they do, and it takes a recognition of leadership to accommodate this 10-15% of the technical workforce that are joining companies. We at Christie do provide leadership opportunities for people to show their leadership and build their careers based on leadership, not necessarily within the framework of the company. So for example, we do provide a program which is called LEAP, which is Leadership Essentials program, where people go on 18-month program, and they spend some of their own time, plus company donates some time, and they learn essentials of leadership. We also, every year, we have people submitting proposals of how they would like to make a world a better place. Company does provide these employees with the winners of these competitions are provided with some time off. They're provided with money and support, financial support from the company, and they do go around the world chasing dreams and making the world a better place. Just recently, one of our employees came back from Argentina, where she worked in the shelter for battered women. Academic world. Our education system turns out exceptionally good engineers, food scientists, chemists, machine operators, but they have very little understanding of the business world. And I'm talking specifically about non-business graduates, technical program graduates. So when they come to the companies, when they join the workforce, they spend some considerable amount of time understanding of how things work and what the context is of what they do. I'm speaking from personal experience as well. I'm a graduate of a major Ontario university, and when I started working, it took me a while to figure out what HR does, and how company decides what they need to build and how many of that, and when there's too much that they're building. None of that was in my food science courses that I was mostly taking. And I do believe that universities and colleges do need to reach across the walls of their silos and across the silos of the industry, because we also do live in silos, and create opportunities for joint work for the industry practitioners to join courses at universities and colleges as adjunct professors, to teach students, to excite them, to be in front of them, and convince them that manufacturing is actually a right career and a right choice of future. And then the government, my third leg in the stool. I've recently spoken to the senior manager at Siemens, who joined that company after spending 15 years working as a bureaucrat for the government. And he said in the first week on the job at Siemens, he figured out that he had no clue, working for the government, making decisions on how that affect industry. He had no clue what the real life is day to day in the manufacturing environment. And he was actually glad for the experience both in government, on the government side of the equation, as well as on the industry side of the equation, because that, in his words, giving him a rounding that it's needed to be successful. And I think that more of that movement of talent between government and industry is necessary. And I think that some of the work that industry associations are doing should be directed towards having industry participation in the government decisions. So in closing, I just want to reiterate that alongside farming, mining, manufacturing is one of the areas of true wealth generation. And if we want to be, as a society, if we want to be truly wealthy, we do need to treat manufacturing as a strategic asset. And strong leadership and vision is needed by academic community, government, and industry to better translate talent into strong and vibrant manufacturing careers. And I do believe that's very doable. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to keep my comments brief. I'd like to actually get engagement in the audience, so I'll try to keep this speech to about 45, 50 minutes. Okay, that's an academic joke, and let's get off with that. I am from Sheridan. We're proud to say we have an advanced manufacturing center, 18,000 square feet available to work, and it works, and because it's a partnership between the college and industry and government. And I think when we look at, how do you engage the students, how do you get people excited about it, I think one of the key things that we have to do is change the perception of what manufacturing is. And we had a great discussion before the panel of what manufacturing, it's that old paradigm, don't go into manufacturing because, you don't be hitting out gramo grumpets and 100 a day, and don't think about making anything out in gramo grumpets. And I think, and I hope that those days are gone. I think what we have to look at is the new changing face of manufacturing and how to engage the students into that new paradigm. And the way you do it is by embracing technology and taking breath. So what's worked extensively, or what's worked well at Sheridan, is when we go to our industrial partners and we actually listen. And instead of saying, you need to know this or you need to know that, our best projects are one where we ask our industrial partner, what do you need to know? Because they know their business is best. So I think what has to change if you want to see more students engaged into manufacturing is you need to embrace the concept of collaboration between the various stakeholders, between industry and government and the colleges. So it's very important that we teach our students, and Ihor mentioned about breaking down barriers. There are barriers. There are silos in institutions. I like to say we're perfect and we all hug each other in the morning and we all solve problems, but that's not the case. Reality is, we're all very busy people. We all try to do different things, and so silos go up, and sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. If you want to embrace and you want to change things and you want to get people excited, you expose people to what it can be. So if you talk about a true partnership, invite the students in to listen to what industry needs. And then have the students say, don't say, your lifelong ambition is to make 101 gramo grumpets a day. It's how can you help me make gramo grumpets or something better? And you do that by engaging in an active dialogue. So that's something I'd like to propose out there, that if you want an enhanced workforce, it's about partnerships and about listening to each other. I look forward to an active dialogue, because I know there are things which will pop up, but it's the concept I really want to push is let's make it a partnership. Let's listen to what industry needs, what colleges can do, and how we can enhance the student experience by making sure that they are exciting jobs in manufacturing. And the world is changing in manufacturing. It's not working on a line from 9 to 5 and then going home. There's ways of embracing smartboard technologies. There's a way of young people coming in and using their iPhones or their Blackberries or their Playbooks or their iPads to embrace new advances in manufacturing. So instead of everybody saying, the perception in the media is that manufacturing is dead, don't go in manufacturing, I would argue, and I would challenge people at this conference right here, that's not the right attitude. I think we have a chance to leapfrog in new advances in manufacturing by engaging our workforce and helping people understand how technology can be used to make manufacturing the cool place to be. And with that, I'll leave it there and invite the other people to come up and make their comments.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here. It was a long flight from the States that shouldn't have been. But my name is Scott Seeley. I'm with the Lancaster County Workforce Investment Board. Without explaining a whole lot about what a Workforce Investment Board is, if I would say that it's a workforce intermediary, does that ring a bell for anybody? We're the kind of the entity between the supply side and the demand side. The companies that need people to work, that need a workforce, and the entities like schools and various other programs that are moving people into the workforce. We're the place where that all comes together through various kinds of centers. There are some 700 or 800 of these around the United States, and we're part of this overall network. The interesting part is that they're all administered, though, locally, and they have kind of a local character to it. And what we found about 10 years ago when this system was being put into place and we were trying to figure out what it is they actually want us to do, we began to look at the whole idea of we should be responsive to what's going on in our local economy. And as we really reached out to try to find more about what is the local economy all about, we found that there was not a whole lot of people who had the kind of knowledge that we needed in terms of which industries were actually driving things. Many of you may know the work of Michael Porter from Harvard, who has done work with clusters and has pushed that whole idea of clusters forward. What we've tried to do is take Porter's work, do the analysis within a local economy, and then to think about, to move out and to talk to the industries that emerge as the leaders that we would like to invest in. Now that's probably pretty non-Porter because he doesn't really like to pick winners. But in our area we've said maybe we could use that information in economic development and as a way to direct the government investment that we bring to the table to actually do some things that may be good. So following the Dean's suggestion, we actually worked in the early days by bringing groups of companies in some of the key clusters together to actually ask them that question, what do you need? And what we found is that in our particular area, Lancaster County is one of the biggest agriculture producing counties in the country, but it's also one of the largest manufacturing producing counties with several other counties in the area. Still 20% of our workforce in manufacturing. And with that, we gather manufacturers in the food area, the plastics area, in the metals area together, and really tried to ask that in a little bit more definitive way in your particular industry, not just manufacturing as a whole. What are the drivers? What do you really need? What do you see for the future in terms of things that are going? And again, Keith, my colleague, is going to talk a bit about some of the higher end things that came out of that. One of the first things they said is, you know, we need a better technical workforce, and he'll tell you some about how we kind of move that ahead into the next stage. But I wanted to, and I told the folks who were organizing this panel that I wanted to speak a little bit about the low-tech side of things. Because right after we heard we need a better technical workforce, we heard from the same employers, but you know, we also need a better entry-level workforce. And when we pushed that a little bit further, we wanted to find out, what do you mean people aren't really ready to work? And it was interesting, the word that we got back. They were saying foundation skills. We still have people that come to us that can't read and write, let alone compute and use the digital tools that are out there. We need to make sure that those things are taken care of. If you're in manufacturing and you can't use a micrometer in certain industries, you know, forget it, you're lost. And this is the situation that many of the employers were experiencing. The second thing, now I'm not sure about Canada, I don't know about how your dropout rate is, but let me tell you about a dropout rate from high school in the United States. It's horrible. And with that comes the kind of the skills in terms of the soft skill kinds of things. We have employers that are saying, you know what I really need is somebody that's going to, when they get the job, that's going to come to work and come to work on time and come to work ready to deal with teams of people and communicate and do all those other kind of things. So the second element of work readiness was just those soft skills. And then the other thing that really surprised us, particularly in light of the conversation we had earlier about the higher end advanced skills and such, is that they were actually looking for some other hard skills, but they weren't the kind of things that we normally think of. They need material handlers. They need people who are machine operators who know how to do some basic repairs still on mechanical machinery, and to know how to interface with the computers that actually run many of the machines. And we got this list, just one item after another. And what occurred to us is, you know, these are things that really are skills. They're not so much content that's caught up in an academic curriculum. So what we've been exploring over the last number of years is how do we actually meet the needs of employers. And again, so I don't go on, I'm going to tell you just 2 stories. My wife says I can talk about anything for an hour, so I'm not going to do that. But one of the things that happened is that we had one of our manufacturers, who happens to be the largest printer in the world, who has 3 divisions in Lancaster County. And they came to us and they said, you know, our machine operators, we're not getting the kind of people that we need. We need to have a more diverse workforce, and we need some help because we can't do it. And we said to them, well, what do you teach the folks after you hire them? What happens in the first 3 months? And they came out with a curriculum that was about this big. And we found out it was not about putting ink on paper, but rather it was about basic machine maintenance and machine operation. And we, as this public entity, said to them, why don't you give us that curriculum? And let us bring that in-house in terms of our center where we see all these people, and let us train people in that curriculum before you employ them. And let's really concentrate on the skills that you need and actually have that foundation base. And actually through that, we've generated a program that has been successful over the last 3 years, where this very large company is hiring 80% of the graduates of our program that we do within the center. Our center is not a school, really. It's a place where people learn skills. And we learn an awful lot from that in terms of you know, where we need to begin meeting the needs of business. That's the good story. Here's the bad story. Last summer we had a chance to put folks who come from our welfare system into private industry for the first time through a government program. We placed probably 65 to 70 people. Many of them were placed with manufacturers for the first time, because in the past these public programs had gone into basically nonprofits, that kind of thing. Every one of the persons who went into a manufacturing facility failed. They did not complete the placement. And we asked the employers, what happened? Why is that? You know, what did you see? What were the excuses? And what came out is that people were saying, the employers were saying, folks told them, they didn't really understand that if I was in manufacturing, I'd have to stand on my feet for 8 hours. They also said, you know, they really expect you to show up at 8 o'clock when it's time to work. And, you know, there's a pace that happens in the factory, and they expected me to keep going with that. The other thing, so what we found out, I think, from that exercise and really that failure is that we also need to be thinking not only about foundation skills, soft skills, hard skills, but we also have to be thinking about the culture of the entity or the industry that people work in. People have to have some sense of what happens in those particular industries and be able to appreciate that and actually expect it so they don't have this shock when they walk into it. So we are tailoring programs now that actually have a foundation skill requirement that moves into a occupational skills, usually no more than 3 to 8 weeks worth of training, but with the skills that employers need, and that further have a 2 to 3 week work experience that begins to introduce the culture. It's not the end all and be all. It's not the last word in what we need to do, but we need to be moving those things forward because they provide the base for the kind of things that Keith Campbell is going to talk to you about. We think that this non-credit experience and the skill development can actually articulate, if we have smart people, into taking a non-credit experience and moving it into an academic career path. So at this point, let me turn it over to my colleague, Keith Campbell, who will tell you a little bit more about some of that higher end stuff.
Well, hello from Pennsylvania. I had a little better travel experience than Scott, thank goodness, so I got to enjoy the show yesterday. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the kind of skills that one would expect a student to get somewhere between the latter parts of high school and a 2-year associate degree from college. And to state my premise in terms of what we heard from some of today's keynote speakers, process innovation has allowed us to maintain a rather significant production economy. Scott said 20% of the workforce is employed yet in manufacturing. But we need now to have innovation in our education processes to be able to sustain the production processes that we've put in place. We aren't faced with a likely skill shortage. We're facing a crisis skill shortage. A study that was recently completed in Pennsylvania said that over the next 10 years, we're going to create thousands of job openings in advanced manufacturing and industrial maintenance. And for every 40 of those job openings, given our present rate of putting people through our education system, we're going to graduate one person with the skills for those 40 jobs. That's a 40-to-1 ratio set for failure. These jobs have tremendous leverage in our economy. I think they say that a manufacturing job will leverage somewhere around 10 non-manufacturing jobs. And if I think about my experience in manufacturing, I can tell you that a good industrial maintenance person can make successful or make fail 20 or 40 regular manufacturing jobs. So when you think about the leverage effect of a properly trained and capable industrial maintenance person, it's just huge. It can have a huge impact on the economy. So the combination of these demographics, the impact that Mechatronics is having on our manufacturing processes, and the fact that we can't attract young people into educational pathways leading to manufacturing means we've needed to take a different approach. It seems to me from what I've seen here that Ontario has done maybe a better job than we've done in terms of mechatronics at the academic degree and engineering level. We've done very little in that in the United States, but we have spent some time focusing on that at the technology level. As Scott and I went around and visited companies, a global VP of operations told us this. He said, "I don't know who my next maintenance people are going to be." He said, "All I know is they already work for me." He recognized and was acknowledging that it's easier to take a person that's already involved in manufacturing and upgrade their skills to a new level than it is to take a person with skills and convince them to come to work in manufacturing. We've therefore taken our efforts and focused them on incumbent workers. Yes, we need the high school students to be entering these programs. Yes, we need to be putting them through the system. But we really don't have time to solve that problem before we start bringing forward people with more skills to fill these jobs. So I thought what I would do is I'd share with you just briefly a baker's dozen plus 2 of lessons that we've learned, things that you might be able to take. Maybe Ontario's situation's a lot different, but maybe there'll be 1 or 2 of these things that'll help you out. And I think we've already talked about number 1 on my list. That's ask the best of the best what they need. And I would add to that, then listen to what they say, ask questions until you understand what they're telling you, and then act on what those people need. Focus your, whether public or private efforts, then on the top third of world class. The second third will eventually follow, and the bottom third, where we've typically spent most of our public funds and tried to help industry, we've tended to do that on the people that are already failing. Well, they're going to fail anyway. So let's not focus on the bottom third, focus on the top third. We made a conscious decision early on that even though we could buy training programs in the commercial market, we were going to require our public education system to deliver the programs that industry needed. Why? Because if we don't do that, they're going to become more and more irrelevant because they're going to fall further and further behind. Then provide a path to academic college credit for all of the workforce training programs that you do. Don't make workers repeat in order to go back and gain academic credit. Find a way to give academic credit for material that they already know. We don't want to make workers sit through classes that they could probably teach. This is a tough one. Provide training when and where it's needed. You have to accept the reality that incumbent workers, especially maintenance people, don't have regular hours and don't have a schedule. When things break, they have to work. When a new plant's starting up in some other location, they may have to go. So training has to be delivered on a flexible schedule, and that may require computer-based training, internet-based training, all sorts of things. We're working with schools that will enroll students in a class every Monday. The class doesn't just start at the beginning of the semester. You can start a class any given Monday, and the class has no designated ending time. It ends when the students get through it. We need to be able to articulate credits from institution to institution. That's from high school to college, from college to university, and we need to allow students to constantly be moving back between work and school and work and school. We have programs that we call 2+2+2. 2 years in the high school, 2 years in the community college, 2 years at the university, maybe work interspersed between. Don't pretend that your courses can be all things to all people. Very base level skills can work across multiple industries, but as the skills become more advanced, it's important that you must focus on specific industries and specific sectors within those industries. And don't dumb down courses so that you can get to a lowest common denominator of need. I'm also, you notice I wear my I Love Mechatronics pin. Some of the kids have tried to steal this from me during the show, so maybe you could invest in these for next time for them. But you know, by its very nature, mechatronics is a very broad endeavor. And then each of the areas within mechatronics is very deep. And you can't do both breadth and depth or you become a full-time student. So for every industry sector, there needs to be a little different focus to get the right combination of breadth and the right combination of depth. Make sure that all the classes include hands-on experience with real equipment. Make them experiential. Here's one we tend to overlook. Teach troubleshooting as both an art and a science. And make sure it's done on real-life situations. But troubleshooting, when you really start listening to employers and you ask, well, why do you want this? And well, why do you want that? It all comes down in the end to, well, we want people that can troubleshoot. Develop or identify meaningful industry credentials, things that along the way to a degree, a student can walk away with a credential that represents some mastery of a topic and which allows employers to gauge people that come to them on a kind of a common measurement. Recognize that these programs are exceedingly expensive. Use the training revenues you get to buy equipment and to cover costs, not to redevelop curriculum that may already exist. We need to collaborate across institutions because it's just too expensive for every school to be able to afford to duplicate what the school next door to it has done. Recognize that the above requirements are extremely disruptive to faculty. These things don't fit too well in a typical pedagogical model, and you need to find a solution to that along the way. Don't grant credit for the number of hours that students are in front of faculty. That tends to be a yardstick that people use. Well, we had 45 contact hours with the student, so we should grant him a credit. No, it's really about, well, what has that student mastered? And since most of this is lab work, contact hours is really a pretty meaningless measure. Finally, schools have advisory boards, and I think it's better for a large group of schools or a group of schools to get advice from a small group of executive visionaries than for each school to have its own group of middle management reactionaries. That's really what the Mid-Atlantic Mechatronics Advisory Council is about. We have a group of executive visionaries, and we make ourselves available to schools across the region to kind of help them do their strategic thinking. So while all of this is ongoing with incumbent workers, we recognize the need to be getting young students into the pipeline, but we really just can't wait that long. There's a lot more that we could say about each of these 15 or so strategies, but if anyone has questions, we'll cover them in the question period. So thank you.
That was some very insightful comments there. Each of our panels have offered a very engaging insight and shared, and I expect that there are some questions from the audience. So I would like to open the floor to questions now. There are a couple of two microphones here, so if you have a question, please put up your hand or go into the aisle and we'll get you a microphone and you can address your question. Back?
Companies live and die by the market forces around them. And the survivors and the good ones are quick and lean and make the right choices. The talent that goes into those companies, that run those companies, typically comes out of academic institutions all the way from kindergarten all the way to university. My question, perhaps more to Darren than anybody else, because you've got both university and college experience, is what can schools from, high school, college, university, what sort of things could they do to sort of be on the same pace as industry and adapt and be agile and lean and as really the business environment where the talent needs to be thinking in that kind of culture and that kind of environment. While you're thinking, I'll just give another example. I don't know if you realize, but the summer holidays were created because they had to let people out of schools to go and collect the harvest from the fields. That's why we have summer holidays. And the school year is still the school year as it has been since that time in the agricultural age. So I'm just wondering if there are more systemic types of things that institutions or governments or people who are in charge of just to try and kind of create the same kind of culture or the same kind of sort of market forces that need to happen to give people that experience.
Okay, what a question. There's a couple ways to answer that question, and I agree that traditionally academic institutions maybe don't work at the same pace, but I would argue that there's two ways to answer this question. The first way is I don't think One you probably like, one you won't. So I'll get around to the answers I think to it. So the first thing is, I don't think an academic institution can act as quickly as industry wants, because industry moves today, tomorrow, and you need a stabilizing force. So you need to have somebody retaining the skills to kind of figure out the long-range plans as opposed to the day-to-day. So probably not the answer you want to hear. But the way you can engage a faster response from the academic institutions is opening up a dialogue with industry. In other words, rather than, and we heard it at today's conference, saying, I've got this great product, this is what industry wants, and industry says, not really, that's not what I want. You got to get the dialogue going. So if you want the process to work faster, catalyze interactions where you're listening to what industry has to say, and then responding in the ways that you can to drive it. In Ontario, changing curriculum, as an example, is a very long process that needs to be looked at a much higher level than I could discuss. But we can respond quickly to industry needs by understanding what they want and getting on board and forming virtual partnerships with industry. So that would be one way. Once you understand what the problem is, then you can gear kind of curriculum or your response to it. But I don't think it's realistic, and I tell people, I've worked in industry, now I'm working in academic. If you need something done by Monday, a post-secondary institution is not where you want to go. If you're looking at in timelines of months, we can help you. And then we probably could develop training programs through continuous education, workshops, and other things that will help respond to the industry needs. But I don't think have curriculum change, within a week or a short period of time, and I don't think you'd want to. You want to teach the core skills and then adapt to tweaks in it.
I might just also add that government doesn't really move at the speed of business either, in case you didn't know that. I just thought I'd say it. But I think what we've tried to do, again, along that line, is to try to build a relationship with business that's ongoing. So by having the clusters identified, by having partnerships, we have several of our clusters that have 70 to 80 companies that are part of that group that meet on a regular basis, so that when an opportunity arises, we can move on it quickly. So we have gone from supervisory training to training welders in 3 months, for example, because that's what the industry needed to have happen at that time. So to me, there's an element of planning and infrastructure building that you can actually do that sets the stage then for things that happen and deal with the kind of things that will come up in industry.
Yes.
Just one other comment to that. As I said earlier, I think it is very important for the industry to join in the learning and teaching process, and for the academic institutions to accept the adjunct professors who will be coming from industry and who can bring in not just the real-life experience, but also this real-life excitement and real-life examples of what those manufacturers' careers can lead to. And I think that we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to the next generation to make better use of that experience and expertise that resides in industrial world, and bring that into the academic world.
Could I just build a little bit on that? Keith, you mentioned that what you're proposing is very disruptive to faculty, and I would think that this is probably much more of a case, I would think, with the university situation as opposed to the college situation. I think colleges probably are able to respond much more quickly. How do you get over that? I mean, we've heard time and time again when we've talked to industry, collaborative research projects, once you've got them started, particularly with the university, very difficult to kind of get them to change course and meet the needs of industry as the project goes along and things change. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to how you deal with that?
Let me say I've not got any experience with success at university. We do have some success at the college level. It takes courageous leadership. Part of it's been through going to arbitration with faculty. Part of it's just taking the position, you know, I'm going to offer this to adjunct faculty, and the other faculties, they can either join it or not, but we're just not going to deal with those issues. And I've seen people take some very courageous leadership roles there. And the other side of it, you'll see the industry come and support you with that. Sometimes industry will say, we'd love to come and take your program, but if we have to do it with your regular faculty, we're going to go somewhere else. I've seen that happen. So I'm not an HR person. I'm an engineering geek, and all I can say is some of what I've observed, but the actual details of how you work that out, I'd let to some others.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about industry and academia, but I'm wondering what, if any, role you see for government in this in these issues.
I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help. Every time I say that, people get a kick out of that. I do think that what I see with my colleagues in the workforce system in the United States is that some people understand that government, with the right kind of leadership, and it's almost an entrepreneurial kind of leadership at the local level, can actually do very significant things. They can be the workforce intermediary that brings industry and education system and various entities like the welfare system and such together. That's a role that it's difficult to embrace. There's a lot of literature that's out on that right now. The Aspen Institute out of Washington, D.C. has done some very interesting research on sector projects and how you actually do that whole intermediary role. There's a group called Public-Private Ventures out of New York City that have also written a variety of monographs and such. There are people who have been doing this for 20 and 25 years and making it work. The big problem is actually taking it to scale. Most of these projects happen and they're 25 or 30 people a year. So we've been asking the question, so how can you make that 250 or 1,000 or 2,500 a year? And you need to, I think, develop a way to collaborate and bring resources together. The other part that we absolutely understand is that government is never going to have enough money to do everything that has to be done. It's got to be leveraged with the support from the private sector and from other entities as well. I'd love to talk to you about coalition building. It's really what this is all about, but that's how you do it, is you develop those relationships and reach out.
I think really that governments can play the role of catalysts in bringing, forming the conditions that will allow the various groups and stakeholders to come together and bring them together. Events like Discovery 2011, where you're creating the conditions where industry can interact with academia, that can interact with and everybody can get a dialogue going. So that's an important role, because if you go to an industry and say, boy, you know, I really have this, then another industry has to get together, yeah, I have that problem too, and then I don't have the time, industry says I don't have time to drive it, and if academia drives it, then, you know, then it's an academic exercise. Governments could say, look, this is for greater good, here are the conditions, why don't all stakeholders come together and see how we could work together? There's a second important thing that governments can do, and it's not just writing big checks and saying good luck, hope it works. It's putting the right amount of money, and Scott mentioned it, leveraging. How do you leverage, and how do we get that, you know, finding out what that balance. So putting a little bit of grease on the wheel and then stepping back and creating the conditions that will allow things for success.
And I think everything was said already, what the government can do. One thing that I would add is how can government do some of that? And is, again, to go back to the expertise that is available in the industry and use some of that expertise. So some of the people working in the government have the real life experience from the industry.
I think I'll add a little bit to that. I think we've started the process here. We're talking about it. Academia is here. There's industry here. This forum is presenting it. We're talking about it. I think, as we discussed earlier prior to this session, some of us, industry is doing a lot of its own training of people. There's a lot of great examples of programs that have been developed in Canadian businesses. I think some of the colleges and universities need to seek out some of those major corporations that are doing significant training within their own businesses. How are they tailoring that to their needs, and what's their success rates? I'm sure they have lots of data on that. So I think it starts here. We're doing it today, we're talking about it, and we just need to continue with the thrust. So, next question.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this panel. Just a couple of observations and then maybe a question. Actually, to be fair to the U.S. federal government on the talent question, and I'm a Canadian, but I watch American television. Uncle Sam does a very interesting and creative job in making young Americans aware of job opportunities in the Marines and the military. I watch those. Well, I'm deadly serious. Big employer. We heard Colin Anderson, if you heard him at lunch, say that in a sector that I know something about, the energy sector in Canada, a critical shortage of people. Where would I find, I'm a 16-year-old in Thunder Bay or Oakville or Cornwall, Ontario. Where would I actually find that information out, and how would that be relevant to me at a critical point where I'm A, getting interested in my future education or training, and I and my parents have probably got some interest in a meaningful job. At the local or community level, where would, in 2011, whether it's Altoona, Pennsylvania, or Toronto, Ontario, where would I actually, as a consumer interested, find out in a real and meaningful way what that opportunity is, where it is, and what I need to do to access it? I think we do a terrible job of that. And it's not to blame anybody because, and again, to use a couple of analogies, I'm a bit of a sports fan. You know, if you're a sports fan, you know that the NBA and the NHL and Major League Baseball, they have these draft programs. I'm stunned at the kids who, the amount of infrastructure and interest and investment in making the world know what those millionaire sports people are going to be connected to. Where is that in these critically short, vitally important sectors? I ask rhetorically. We know how to do it. We just don't do it in a variety of places. And I think, in fairness, there's a bit of a confusion as to mandate. Whose responsibility it is? I think my sense, and I'm an old education minister, I think the default position is to some guidance teacher in some area high school, in the hope, prayer, and expectation that Mary or Charlie is kind of up to date on the latest information that Colin Anderson talked about at lunch. You know, again, 50 years ago, we created a really radical, transformative change in the Ontario post-secondary sector. It was called the University of Waterloo. And it was not it wasn't an easy thing. A lot of people thought that was a very bad thing. The idea you were going to embed cooperative education in computer and engineering. Now we've stopped, well, I shouldn't say we've stopped it. So we know how to do some of this sort of stuff. I'm kind of excited by the opportunity, but increasingly frustrated now that I'm 60 and I've been around this debate forever. Why do we seem to fail at the local and regional level? And I'll be very specific. I'll use my sectoral interest right now in energy. A shocking shortage, but a vast number of people who might be interested at local levels haven't a clue what that opportunity is, what it requires, what it pays, and what the various steps that they might need to take at grade 11 through the high school in Sheridan or wherever else to access something they might like to do. So sorry for the long preamble, but how do we get the U.S. Marine, the National Hockey League draft system into those parts of the economy where we all say, really important, crisis ongoing, because we can't seem to figure out how to do it?
Yeah, personally, I believe it's a local leadership issue, and there are areas that are getting that kind of thing done. We start with kids in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade in elementary school with career camps every year, where they are exposed to at least 12 to 15 different occupations, and we do that year after year after year. job shadowing, that kind of stuff. Some of this stuff has become kind of sort of trite when people talk about it, but if you do it with a plan that actually goes back to what the labor market information is telling you about your needs, you can begin to focus it on careers. If you go to our website, www.lancastercountywib.com, you'll see the top 100 occupations in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. That's a focused attempt to really help answer that question of where should we be putting our priorities. Lots of information. We work with the schools to get that out. We may not be typical of places around the country, but it can be done.
Yeah, I think one really interesting program we had was to take high school guidance counselors to industry trade shows. It's really eye-opening for someone that's spent their whole life in a classroom environment to go out and see the technology that's there. And one thing that I think is a really great best practice, but it comes from Europe, where apparently the lawyers have a little less impact than they have here in North America, is that trade shows in Europe have Family Day. So if you're at one of the world's largest trade shows and Saturday or Sunday comes along, it's Family Day, and you see families walking through these trade shows with their children by the hand, getting to experience all this great technology and what's going on in manufacturing. We put signs up at our trade shows, absolutely no one under 16 may enter. And that's just wrong, in my opinion, and we should do something about it.
I think that's an interesting question, and I think it's all stakeholders have to do better, but we have to have a cultural shift, especially in Ontario. We don't celebrate. I mean, we're so busy saying you have to fit into this silo or in this box, and here's a real life example. So a few years back, my son participated in a competition in innovation called Destination Imagination. Has anybody heard of it? It's basically a challenge to high school students or elementary students to solve a problem. And he went to Ontario and he went to the world. Finished 13th in the world. Not bad for a local school in Ontario. It was great. So you thought everybody would be excited, right? I mean, and they treat these kids, and this is the American way. They marched them into Tennessee Stadium and they all chanted, "We're nerds, we're proud of it." And it was on the internet. It was great. So what did we do the next year? Principal said that was too much work. We can't do that again. He shut down the program. So you want people to go into trades, you want people to go into manufacturing. You got to start celebrating. You got to start saying, hey, this is a cool thing. Have an event, call it Manufacturing 2012, and celebrate the people who've done something special or have gone and make them feel like they're special. And celebrate and give awards and let people have the media, but the media doesn't want to cover it. Media only wants to cover floods in, here, floods there, this hockey player dropped dead, oops, or what's happening. And we've got to, from a college point of view, we've got to do a better job at the outreach. So we go to high schools, we go to our stakeholders, and we try to make them aware of programs. We need to do better, but we also need to change the media and get them involved in the process so that we could start changing our mindset. And that's how you will drive people into it. And when people say, yeah, this is cool to go into manufacturing, there are cool jobs, then you'll get more people going there.
I do have a question back to you. What is your sector doing about drafting those young people? What we have done at Christie, we do go to drafts, and we do that by going to graduating classes from colleges, and we typically targeted in the past RCC and Conestoga College. And we do take actually young people who work for us for last, let's say, couple of years now, graduates from that college, that specific college. They do go and they talk to graduating class, and we do skim off the top of the talent pool that's available in graduating classes.
Just to answer that question quickly, I think my experience is there are some really interesting things being done, but I think there's a pattern to the difficulty. Firstly, and again, I'm thinking mostly at the local and community level. Where's the leadership? Where's the leadership in the community, really? A lot of rhetoric. I want to know who's really in the community at the business or labor or educational level. Who lives there? And how invested are they in the community? And how does their behavior actually reflect that? Rhetoric, lots of it. I want to see the reality. And then, because there's lots of rhetoric, and I'm, guilty of that as the next person. But then it's also the how. And one of the things that I've found, I used to, as I say, do a fair bit of this, where I found people started to really pay attention is when, quite frankly, I'd be really crass in a way that a lot of my educational friends would recoil. Here, I've got a mitt full of $85,000 a year jobs I know none of you would be interested in. We never talk money. Most people I know, including myself, when I was thinking about it, what does it pay? Does it lead anywhere? You've got to make the thing real for some 16-year-old. And the best way to do that is to take my friend Carol and put her in front of them as the kind of living, breathing person you want them to be. There is no substitute for that. We don't do that we hand out paper and there's and kids today are, but that's the problem. I grew up in a community where a very, very famous Canadian aviator lived down the street. We all knew he was famous. He was the chief test pilot for the Avro. I don't think he was ever invited to any of this stuff. I often think of that now. Can you imagine? Maybe there was no aviator, no engineer in that community, but nobody saw it as their responsibility, as I recall, to say, you are coming to a mandatory performance. You're going to meet a really interesting guy or gal, as the case may be. That's the piece I think that's missing, that in your neighborhood in Oakville, you are going to go and you're going to actually see a couple of people that are really interesting and successful in a sector that has a very significant need. And this is what they do. This is the educational ingredient. That's the piece. It's in my experience, it's a handout or it's a this or that. And people that I know basically like to see the living, breathing reality, and they like to see some of the ingredients, like first of all, is it understandable? What are you talking about? What is a biomedical engineer? I have no idea, and I'm afraid to ask. Maybe if I saw my friend Carol, she might explain it. But I think that at the end of the day, I think it's a failure of community leadership. There are a lot of people who mean well, talk a lot, and I know, listen, I've had high school principal friends of mine that said, when's the last time you actually went to the United Church Women and said, here's what we're up to? We keep a lot of the debate inside a very, it doesn't penetrate into the broader mainstream where it needs to be, quite frankly, for it to be successful. That would be my impression. And that's not to say there are not some interesting and creative things done. But when we keep talking about crises, thousands of $85,000 and $90,000 and $100,000 a year jobs we can't fill, I want to talk to some parents, if nobody else, because I think there's an audience there. We just got to find a way to get at it.
Thank you.
Just one comment. I agree with what you say also. But the other thing we have to look at, and being from Oakville, look at the Oakville plant. They used to give tours. So encourage people to see what a manufacturing, until somebody got hurt. Now they don't give tours because of liability issues. So I think that's an elephant in the room that we have to start addressing, risk management and how we do it. Otherwise, companies don't want to open their doors to show people because they're afraid somebody will get hurt or, God forbid, do something they shouldn't, get hurt. So that's an issue that we have to address as well.
I think there's another part to it too, and let me just tell you a quick story. We do these career camps for kids in late elementary school, and I was touring the camp the one day, and I went into a place where these 4 little boys, about 10 or 12 years old, were tearing apart a lawnmower engine. And the man who was the instructor came over to us, and he was talking a little bit, and he turned around and he saw that they were struggling, and he said, just a minute. And he walked back over to the group of the boys and he calmly explained to them, you have the wrong wrench here. So let's go over and take a look at the toolbox and let's really, figure that out in terms of which one you actually need. And then they got through that, they came back, and it was interesting because in the wrench there were like 6 little hands, and then he put his hand on top of it and he helped him turn it, and they actually moved the bolt. I came back a little later and they had torn the whole engine down, they had cleaned it, they had put it back together, and at the end of the day, he was taking these 4 or 5 little boys outside. They had never seen a power lawnmower cutting grass, and he was showing them this is actually how it's used as well. We need to have leadership, not just in terms of the organization and all the rest of it. We need to have those kind of mentoring people in folks' lives as well. I guarantee you that those little boys will never forget that experience. And that maybe down the line, they would be the folks that we could look at to be some of our mechanics somewhere. But just a thought.
So I think in lieu of the time, we're about 12 or 13 minutes over, and the closing remarks are wrapping up here soon. So I'll turn the podium back over to Carol and take it from there.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. This has been a very interesting and inspiring discussion. We've identified a lot of challenges. We've come up with some good solutions. I think for OCE, we've been listening very hard. And for us, we've got to identify the things that we can do because we have a talent program in terms of effectively bridging the gap that we've identified. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Ihor, Darren, Scott, and Keith for giving their time and expertise today. And I'd especially like to thank Bruce for guiding our discussion. Please accept a small token of our appreciation. In the back. So thank you all for participating in Discovery. This particular discussion's been videotaped, and you'll be able to view it on the Discovery website at a later date. This concludes the presentations in this theatre for today, so I hope you've enjoyed the whole experience of Discovery 2011 and take away the valuable insight and new avenues to pursue. The closing remarks for Discovery will begin in 15 minutes in the main amphitheatre, so please make your way over to the main amphitheatre, which is just behind us. So thank you once again. Thank you for coming and listening and contributing to this discussion.